And I'll start by telling you, as always, a little bit of a story. You know, I was having a coaching call with an executive in Hong Kong, very awesome British lady who had just gotten a very big, very important job with a very, very well-known brand, which I can't share with you, but just know she was all that in a bag of chips. She is going to be the new country manager for China, just to kind of give you an idea if she is no joke. Anyway, we were having a whole conversation because she was starting her new job. And, you know, when you are the new boss, actually introducing yourself to your organization is kind of one of the most important things you should do, because teaching your team how to work with you is one of the most effective ways of doing that. But as we were talking about some of the cultural issues in China, what it was like to be a British person, specifically in Hong Kong, all of the layers and the nuance and the complexity to that, because every person's adventure is different. And as we were talking through it, I realized that she really actually had we should have a better strategy. We actually had a really formed strategy of how to hit the ground running in the first 90 days of her job when it came to how she was going to engage with her new team, how to navigate the cultural issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, what do you want to get out of this session? And she goes, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, you know, let's get the fairy godmother out. Cinderella, what's your ball? Where is it you want to go? Where's the direction you want to head? And I said, you know, you've just gotten this great job. Like, what's the future look like for you? And she said, well, you know, the future for me is probably starting to build a board strategy, but I don't think I'm going to be looking for a board role for another 2 to 3 years because I'm going to be really busy she had a bunch of reasons why she was doing. And I said, if you're thinking about like, what is the future you want to be able to do, you have to consider within that the buying cycle. How long does it take for somebody to go from, ooh, I know who you are, to I want to close? The same way that product marketers think about what is the buying cycle of products. You know, very simple example, if the buying cycle for toilet paper, as an example, super short. Somebody goes, need toilet paper, gonna buy it. Transaction happens usually maybe within seconds if you're getting your stuff off of Amazon, maybe a bit longer if it takes a trip to Costco, depends on your budget level, right? I was working with another guy the other day who his job was to sell oil and gas pipeline infrastructure for a petroleum company out of Houston. Who knew, right? And he and I had a whole conversation about his sales cycle, which is multi-year, very different sales cycle, and how you think about how you would sell toilet paper versus how you would sell an oil and gas pipeline infrastructure. You think about all of the complexity that happens. This will come back in a second. So you think about that for this woman out of Hong Kong, the decision-making cycle, or kind of just the pre-interview cycle for a board role, is up to 18 months. So when somebody's like, oh, we need to look at a new board position, the process actually goes on for 18 months before they start even having conversations with people. And so I said to her, I said, look, if you're on a 2-year cycle, you don't want to wait for 2 years and then start saying, ooh, I am ready for a board role. You actually want to start that conversation now so that in 2 years, when that 18-month cycle is actually starting to ramp up, you are part of the consideration set. And so we had a whole conversation about how does she build the layers of that, and how does she start to teach her network that she is, in essence, available for dates, because it is going to be a long buying cycle. And yes, could a board role drop out of the sky tomorrow? Absolutely. But here's the thing, and what you all remember about your conversations with me is, as much as other people get to give you the opportunities in the rooms that you're not in, you get to choose whether you say yes to them or not. And so I said, look, if one comes too early for you, or it's not the right fit, or it's not the right scenario, you can make the decision to say no. And yes, I'm talking about really super senior executives. I'm talking about board roles, but these apply for, it doesn't matter where you are in your career. So really thinking about not only what is your sales cycle for your industry, et cetera, but also starting to lay the groundwork. So for those of you that aren't looking for jobs today and who are saying, look, I want to pivot, it's really thinking again about the product of you and saying, like, how long is it going to take me to teach the people I need to teach? And how do I go about doing that? And part of what this discussion is today is starting to put some infrastructure around that. Because here's the thing, you are a future product. This is the thing that people are going to be buying from you. And so the same way that any really great, smart salesperson does, you need to figure out how to teach your network, how to think about your CRM approach. I actually think that CRMs are a thing of the past and we should go to individual relationship management. But how do you start thinking about all of that? Because the more you do that, the more you'll actually be able to teach more people, close more deals, et cetera, because that's in essence what you're looking for. And I'm going to give you one slightly horrifying math moment, which you might not have heard yet. I was talking with a woman who has created some new AI software for the whole resume job description matching technology. I'm really curious, and I think some of you were on a call the other day. We have one of the members of our big family who's actually testing it with us. It's really, really interesting what we're initially seeing out of the application, but optimizing your resume for the applicant tracking system is very important. But one of the key numbers there that she shared was prior to COVID, it took on average 150 applications for somebody to get a job. 150, which how many of you are like, okay, now I'm a tiny bit depressed? That's 149 no's. I know. Do not be depressed, because the way to accelerate that 150 is through your network. Because you all know, because you've all done it for other people, if you know somebody who is part of the decision-making set or who is adjacent to, you can skip the whole applicant tracking system thing. Again, I have not submitted my resume for a job since I was 23, and this is way older than it looks. Let me just say that. You do not have to go through that process, and I'm trying to think if I've hired anybody through a resume. No, I don't. Well, I have a whole thing about them, but you all know that. So anyway, let us get back to, I've of course got some show and tell. Some interesting information. Hang on, let me close out some of these so you can see what I'm looking at. Oh, I can't move my toys around because I can't see you. Show you my stuff. Okay. So let's look at, I talked to you about the CRM and the sales funnel. Let's look at what the sales funnel process is for the people who are on a job search today. And I challenge you all to figure out what this is for you. So if you're looking for a pivot, like what are your decision-making processes? And I actually want to walk through this really quickly, because I think, how many of you are like, yeah, this makes sense, like no big deal, I totally get this, and the math doesn't surprise me? Yeah, this is pretty basic stuff. But you sit here, and what works with the concept of a sales funnel is actually breaking down the elements in the sales funnel and figuring out, like, what is the decision-making process from step to step to step. So as an example, and I'm going to do this for job search, when you're in the applicant tracking phase, your goal is to get in the consideration set, is actually to get past the AI. So if you are having to do the resume thing, how do you get past that step? Then you drop into the recruiter. Okay, now you're talking to the recruiter, the initial filter, the person who's going through probably the 20 or so applications that have made it through this step. Your job, among other things, is to ultimately teach that person why you should be a good candidate for the interview panel, which is a little bit different than just why you would be the best candidate for the job. You need to do both, but their job is actually to sell through to the interview panel, the hiring manager, why they should invest time. They are in essence a filter for you. So as you're thinking about that step, and if those of you that have conversations with a recruiter, the question, by the way, of how can I make it easy for you to explain my background to the interview panel or the hiring manager is a great question to ask, because that's the language they need to be able to sell you through in the process. So now you've gotten, let's assume for a second you've done very well there. Congratulations. You've now made it to the interview panel or hiring manager. It's a rare day these days that you're just interviewing with one person, although it does happen, but I'm assuming you're at least doing a panel of people. Here's the thing. They are probably talking to at least 4 other people, which means in that conversation, yes, you need to be able to articulate how you are going to deliver future value, how both your experience and your potential is going to work out, all of that good sort of stuff, super important. But this is where your uniqueness and your understanding of who the decision makers are and why they would individually care is going to matter. This is when, and I hope you've already done some research, but research about the company, great. Research about the individuals that you are going to present to, far more important. So as an example, the last time I had to interview for a job, I interviewed with the CEO, the CTO, the founder, and the CFO. I had already met with the person who was going to be my future boss, and so I wasn't worried about him. And the CTO was also the head of product. So I knew I would want to have a product-based conversation with him. I also knew that he was a fairly dominant personality and that I would need to allow him to have a bit of a dominant personality while also holding my own at the same time. So that's what I'd learned about interviewing with him. With the CFO, I knew that the math, the numbers was really important to him. I also knew that cloud software was important to him. And so thinking about what is it they care about and what do they need to think about, and how do you thread your experience and your potential across the different decision makers so they get a personalized experience, but you come across uniquely. I had this conversation once with a CFO candidate who said she was one of 11 candidates interviewing. And I said, well, if it's 11 candidates, let's think about the product purchasing process here. If there's 11, really what they're doing is trying to decide of the 11, who are the 2 finalists? Who are the 2 that we are going to decide between? And I said, so your job in the panel interview is less to say, look, here is my vision of the future and here is everything else. Your job is to be memorable so that they say, oh my God, we need to bring this woman back. How do you be memorable? How do you be intriguing? So I said, my question for her, and I actually think this is a good question for everybody when you're going through, maybe not a panel interview because it's a bunch of different people, but individual interviews, is what do you want them to remember about you? Especially when there's more than one candidate. It is absolutely fine, by the way, at the end of the interview process, like when you're doing the whole wrap up, it was nice to talk to you, you've asked your questions, all of this, to say to the person interviewing you, before I go, there's one last thing I want you to remember about me, and it's this. And then say whatever it is, because that last thing is what they're going to remember, right? Bonus points, and for those of you who have been to the graphic show, have a graphic to leave with them because you've got some marketing materials, but then that's taking it an extra step. And then, which hopefully then brings you down to the hiring manager. And when you're thinking about that conversation about the hiring manager, you are usually fully qualified for the job. And so the questions are much more about who you are rather than anything that you do. Here's the thing that I always give people on pro tips about the hiring manager. Do remember that the hiring manager has somebody that they report into, even the CEO. And so that is probably what I call a hidden decision maker, because your hiring manager has to justify to their boss why they chose you over everybody else that they chose. Guess what? Not only do they have to do that with their boss, but they also have to do that with their team. And so again, a really simple question of how can I make it easy for you to explain to your team or to your boss, or have I made it easy for you to explain to your team or your boss why I'd be the best candidate? Really great way to find out if they've actually figured out who you are and what you're all about. So a really good check-in. But you'll notice there's the math and there's the conversation, and really considering like, what is the motivation of the individual and what is the conversation that you have. Here's the bonus piece to all of this. Those steps can be made easier for you along the way if your network is helping you. Because if you're leveraging your network to help you get into that pipeline at all, they can actually help you with that conversation along the way. Especially when it comes to potentially hidden decision makers. I have lost count of the amount of times I have been in the room where the strategic decisions are being made, and we've been having a conversation about particular candidates, and somebody who wasn't in the interview process, who was the internal champion of that person in the room, said, guys, this person, and gals, that's what they usually say, right? This person is amazing. I've worked with them before. I really want to work with them again. Like, there's somebody championing in the room for them, and it skips all of those sorts of things. And especially if you've got somebody who has got what I call social capital doing that, it's almost like you've got an extra, extra couple of letters after your name. It's the equivalent of, I talk about the brand lift of being a TED speaker. I'm well aware that a lot of people are like, oh, you're a TED speaker. Well, it's put me in a category of speaker that allows me to kind of play at a whole different level. Same thing happens when you're with somebody who is endorsing you that has a lot of social capital. My perfect example is that if Oprah joined this call, or Michelle Obama joined this call, however interested and engaged you are right now about what it is I'm talking, you'd be all like, peace out, Joanna, I'm talking to Oprah. I would too. That's what I'm talking about, because Oprah, Michelle Obama, way, way, way bigger social capital than I do at the moment. I have squad goals. I don't plan to be a first lady of anything, but that's a whole different conversation. So think about that as you're going through all of this. Okay. Okay, I'm going to come back to my little graphics here for a second, because I do want to talk about this concept of social capital for just a second. Because this is where the dance with your network gets really important. And when you think about this idea of having an individual relationship management platform for yourself, it's almost like you, for lack of a better term, and I don't like this one, you almost need to lead score your contacts. Now, the difference, and for those of you that have been in product or product marketing or sales, you'll understand the concept of lead scoring, which is how likely is this person to buy from us based on information I have with them. Now, same thing, like how likely is somebody to help me? How likely, what is their ability to help me? All of those things are things that you should consider. And yes, am I sitting here telling you that you should score your friends and your network and put a mathematical number on them? Yes. Am I saying that your friends are just a number? Absolutely not. And this is the nuance of doing this with human beings, is I think the insight is helpful for you to actually build and strengthen your network, although the process sounds awfully uncomfortable to begin with, I will say that. But this is why I think about this. So whenever I'm thinking about someone in my network, and I am constantly obsessed with, am I providing value to my network? Am I engaging with my network? I will absolutely say it's been one of the biggest reasons, other than I'm a bit mouthy and I like playing on the edges of things, that I've been and had a lot of success in my career, because I'm really constantly reaching out to people and sharing information. But I look at when I'm measuring, in essence, and I say value, but it's not really value, because that is icky and that's not why I do any of it. But I do measure what's there. And I think about three things. So one, I talk about executive influence. This is the Michelle Obama versus Joanna. My executive influence versus Michelle Obama's executive influence is a smidgen in comparison. But we all have a handful of people in our lives that are kind of fancy. And if they say connect with somebody, they connect with somebody. I think some of you have heard me tell a story about one of my sponsors who is very fancy. And if he sends an email to somebody with me on copy and says, please speak to Joanna, usually with no context, which is a little frustrating, but he gets away with it. The person he sent it to inevitably has an email back in my inbox within 5 minutes saying, he just told me I need to talk to you, when is available. Like, they become very nice about the whole situation. It's awesome. You want lots of people like this. And then I've got other people who, I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head. Well, so my neighbor just moved back in, and in my head, not in a million years did I think that my neighbor would actually be somebody who could introduce me into a room I wasn't in. And she works in a very different industry to me, in a very different world. And as she was moving back into her house, I was very excited to see her. We were chatting and she's like, what are you doing? And I shared and I was teaching her about who I was and what I was all about. And she was like, oh my God, I can introduce you to, and then went through a whole process. Everybody is an opportunity. Now with my neighbor, she is part of the customer support team. So is her influence with the decision maker massive? No. But did I help her in how to make the ask easy, so that when she did ask the person who could actually make a decision, really simple? Absolutely. And will I make sure that my neighbor looks really good in the process also, because she's done me a solid? 100%. This is how I think about moving all of those parts and pieces and think about it. So executive influence is the first one. The second one I always look at, I'm going to go back to my screen, is their amplification ability. So how often and how regularly do they actually do something? How often do they actually act on stuff? I have some other friends who are super fancy and have all sorts of executive influence, but basically never spend it on anybody, or at least haven't spent it on me to date, which is fine. Again, I don't actually sit here and go, I want to judge my friends based on how much they help me, because I don't. I can still have my super fancy friends, and just the fact that they don't do this sort of stuff, they've got their own reasons, and that's totally fine. And so if they're not the kind of person to do it, and they haven't shown propensity to do it, and they don't seem to find, for whatever reason, joy in helping me with this, I then give them a low amplification ability, because it's just not something they do. And I am judgment free on this, judgment free, because this isn't about, at least that's my value. This isn't about a tit for tat thing. There are a number of reasons why these people are super awesome and I love hanging out with them. Their ability to amplify, however, as a score is a little bit low. And then the last thing I always look at is what I call their time score. So I can only imagine the number of emails that Michelle Obama's team get every single damn day from some people who have an amazing story that they want to have her talk about or share, or any of this sort of thing. This is, the more ability you have to amplify and get people to make decisions, the more input you have of people asking for you. And you think about the time thing in general, I'm always conscious of how much of their time am I asking for somebody. So it's a bit of like, what is their potential? How much do they act? And then how much am I asking? So I'm really considering all of those factors because I don't know, have any of you guys read Adam Grant's book, Givers and Takers? If you haven't, highly recommend. The super Cliff Notes version is that we are, like, everybody's a combination of both, right? And there's givers, who are people who generously give all the time. There are takers, there are people who basically take everything they want. His advice to everybody is that you need to be a little bit of a taker and a little bit of a giver and not actually swing one way or another, because you will be taken advantage of if you're too much of a giver, and you're a jerk if you're too much of a taker. And actually it's finding that balance. And so a really, really interesting book to either read or listen to that talks about this idea. And so I sit here and I say, like, what is the right balance for my values and for the fact that it doesn't matter who you are in my network. I also want you to be able to amplify. And so as I think about this, executive influence, ability to amplify in time, one of the number one things I can do for people who are helping me is actually amplify them to people that they want to meet. And it's not just to anybody, but I go, how can I be helpful to them through my own network? And it's the combination of building those things that ultimately allow you to have more influence in the future. If you haven't seen it, and God, Kylie, I don't think we transitioned the article from the old site to the new site, but there's an article I wrote a while back about the mathematics of relationship capital. And literally the math of the more you introduce people to people in a genuine and helpful way, the higher relationship capital you have. Which I don't know about the rest of you, but I really love making that magic happen. It's super fun. When people get together and stuff happens, you're all like, this is good. Guess what? There's a whole tidal wave of awesomeness that happens back if you make that happen. So, okay. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes to remember, because this is a really different way of approaching this. So, okay, now you're all like, okay, stop telling me what to do. Let's get into the action phase. So what I pulled up for you all was, I literally created a new one for you guys, Joanna's super not fancy CRM tracking database. Here's the thing. I've actually gone out and looked at lots of CRM systems and said, will this work for human beings? Sadly, they do not. So if any of you are trying to start a new company, if you want to build me a individual relationship management tool, I'd be super appreciative, because there's not much out there. And what is much more about task management. And I'm like, I'm not trying to optimize my tasks. I'm trying to optimize my relationships. And when I can optimize my relationships, everybody wins. And so you can see all I did here was like, okay, what do I care about? And I put that across the top. And I've even put myself in here just to give you an example, as I've got my name and my email. And then I went in, and this is just my opinion, and scored what was their executive impact, what was their amplification impact, and what was their time score. So how much time do they have to give to me? And you'll see, whoops, as I whiz around on my thing, you'll see just on the first 3 people that I did for you, that Robin here has a really high impact score, which when I first started thinking about like, who were the names on the list, it didn't even occur to me that Robin would skew so high as I thought about her time, her executive impact, and her actual delivery on how many times she's introduced me to people and opened doors. So I was like, I need to go be generous to Robin and make sure we're connected. Now, the good news is that she and I talk fairly regularly, so this is a non-issue. But what I did realize in the process is that I had been missing out on one of the most valuable people in my network. And she genuinely loves introducing me to people. And so actually coming back to her and saying, hey, I have missed out on an opportunity for you to help me be more awesome. Can I get your help? Would actually make her just as happy as me. And so this is why I do this analysis, because it really helps you figure out like, where are the blind spots that you're not thinking about. Here's my pro tip for you here. Create this spreadsheet. Don't worry too much about how you're going to do it yet, but think about the who. And while I've got, 12 names on here, I actually challenge you to create a spreadsheet with 50 people, 50. Because just the exercise of figuring out, you'll be surprised how fast you can come up with 50 names. And going in and looking on your LinkedIn profile, looking at who were past colleagues, looking at past jobs, looking at your Facebook profile if you're still on Facebook or Instagram, I think you will be really surprised how many people you already have in your network, whether they are professional or otherwise, that can help you with really leveraging your network. Now, you'll also see, just looking at, I'm getting blind, to column G, I am currently, and this is why this is just my spreadsheet, I am currently really curious about the concept of professional generosity. I actually think this is what to call social capital in a way that doesn't sound too Marxist in a weird way. There's a woman on LinkedIn, the CEO of Little Bird Marketing, a woman named Priscilla McKinney, who I have been watching, she and a couple of other people, being incredibly professionally generous with their network and with their time. And I asked her about it, and I said, I see you doing this. What's going on? And she said she thinks that generosity is the new competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that is super interesting. And so I'm going to continue to watch this. I thought I would share there. Now, you'll also notice to the right, I have also made myself notes about how do I make it easy and how do I personalize my experience with my network. And so I note things like, what is this person's preferred format of communication? If you're asking somebody for a favor, you use their format, not your format. And I'm constantly learning. Steve, as you can see as an example, I've actually done email personalized. I have probably about 10 people who are on my advisory board that I send some of my really coloring on the edges thinking to. And I do that, A, because I want their feedback, and B, because it's a really great way for them to understand, like, where are the edges of my thinking and what am I thinking about, and it creates dialogue. Steve, as an example, hasn't responded to any of those. And I sat down, and for a moment there, I'm actually going to stop doing this. For a moment there, I went, oh my God, he hates me and he's mad at me, or I said something that is making him cross, or he doesn't love me anymore. Like, I had that whole complete and utter meltdown that we have. And I was like, oh my God, you dummy. Maybe that isn't the right format for him. I actually had a nightmare this week about this. I thought Steve no longer loved me. I had a whole thing. I didn't sleep very well. And so I woke up the next morning and I'm like, you dummy, stop doing this. And so I sent him literally a 2-line email. And I said, can we have a virtual lunch? Which is what we used to do. Because I sat down and I thought about all of my previous engagements with him. And he has been so generous with time, but it's always been face-to-face, always. He's never really responded to me with email. And so I put them, I also know his assistant's name, and so I put her on there too. And I said, I was like, I miss our face-to-face time. I know you're not in the area. Can we make that happen? And literally within 2 hours, email back, now have and I granted the appointment's not until somewhere in October because he's super busy, but I've now got a meeting on the calendar. And I know that that whole conversation in my head about how Steve didn't love me anymore was a load of nonsense. How many of you are like, I've had that, a load of nonsense, like had that thought? Yeah, like seriously, what are we doing here? We all need to get out of our heads and remember that sometimes how we're messaging is as important as what we're messaging to people. And so go back and go, okay, how did it work in my previous life? And so maybe I need to make a tweak there. I'm not going to share it, but I will rattle through, like I track initial ask date. actually keep a copy of what it is I ask them so that I remember, because I have a terrible memory and I always like to look back at notes. Was there a response or wasn't there? This is how, and this was on a separate shoot, this is how I was like, wait a second, Steve's not responding to me, that I actually realized that what it was. I also ask more than once. And I don't do that, hey, I was just checking in response. Actually make the response as valuable and insightful and thought-provoking as the original ask. It's usually shorter, but I do have a check-in and a follow-up if I don't hear anything and I'm looking to hear from somebody from it. Although I always give somebody an easy out, and then I track to see if there's an action. So that I can actually start to see like who's actually doing stuff. Because here's the really, 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 really important part of my spreadsheet. There are 2 thank yous that happen in every single scenario. There is what I call the assumed thank you. I assume good intent from everybody, because the thing is what I don't know, and you think about how those conversations in rooms you're not in are happening. I don't know that somebody isn't randomly going, oh, I should connect with Joanna with that. And it's just telling somebody, hey, you should talk to Joanna. And I have no idea if it's happening. And so I will always send somebody a follow-up note or something that just says, after the initial ask and follow up, even if nothing has happened, I'll come out and I'll say, hey, I just want to say thanks for your time and just listening to all my stuff. If you ever want to engage with it later, it's all good. So always do an assumptive close. If they've done something, then not only, so you shift it to an actual thank you, which I'm assuming I don't have to teach you guys about because nice people on the call, right? But here's the magic thing. How many of you guys are mentors to somebody else? Amy, did your hand go up? Because I just see your, okay. Well, so Alma, can I borrow your brain for just a second? Because I know you are all sorts of awesome. There we go. Awesome. And thank you for wearing sparkles. It's lovely. So I have a hunch you mentor lots of awesome people. Mm-hmm. What average of those awesome people actually follow up with you after they have taken your advice with this is what happened?
Ooh, I'd say 20%.
Okay. And how happy does it make you when somebody follows up and says, Alma, you told me to do this, I did that, and then this thing happened?
150%.
Like thank you very much for letting me lead you to the answer I was looking for. off the chart, people. This is literally the best thing in the world for people. It's like, if you think about the last time somebody took your advice or said, you know, thank you for introducing me, or whatever it is they do, like, this is literally the biggest gift you can give to somebody who is giving you their time, their attention, their whatever. The thank yous are awesome. The actions are amazing. And then this is what I did, the result of the action literally takes it to a whole different level. And my guess is what's true for me is the same for Alma and for the other people that raise their hands, is the more people that come back and go, oh my God, I was really scared, but I did this thing and I did what you asked me to do and I did this, and they come back and tell you, the more somebody wants to do it. And think about that whole, why would somebody want to help you? When you don't know if somebody has acted on your advice, you don't know if it's like, if anything's happening, you actually want to see ROI against your advice, because when you are a mentor to somebody else, your guidance, your nudging, your holding up the mirror, the whatever it is you're doing is in essence your currency. And for those of you who have been at my show a lot of times, I've talked before about how the currency of humans is actually the time that we buy and sell to each other. And whether we get paid for that or not is irrelevant. And I know I often say, oh, you know, I want you to get paid. I want you to get paid for your time, lots and lots of money. But that I followed your advice and this is what I did and it was awesome. Payment is better than money. well, unless you need to pay rent, and that's a whole different story. But the more executive influence you have, the more opportunity you have to do that. And so I really want you guys to think about the entire almost customer journey of the people that you are trying to get help you through your network. So really, really important things to think about. And I know I've talked about, I've talked about this for like 40 minutes. And I did that and sent you a separate toolkit because I've given you the how-to with the toolkit of literally a template that you can use to help have people ask you to help them introduce you to other people to get you out there. And I do want to actually go through that. But I'm saying all of this because you have to think about your strategy. This is not a, if you build it, they will come approach. This is about personalization. It's about being strategic. It's about really being almost the CEO. You are the founding member of the CEO of the future you. And you are the person who gets to make all of those decisions. And you should have a real strategy around it, the same way that you expect the CEOs of Netflix or Apple or whatever, all of the brands that you work with, think that way and really think about your customer journey. And I promise you the investment in thinking about that will pay off in the long term, because what you will start to be known for is somebody who acts on advice, somebody who's a super connector, somebody who personalizes their communication, all of the things. So that said, we're going to do the transformation this week is actually going to be somebody with their email template. Because I want to talk, well, I hope you've all read it and we put a ton of information in there so that you can just use it. I do want to talk through a scenario. So who would like to volunteer to kind of get their email template riffed today for the transformation? Don't all put your hands up at once. Jessica, hi, your hand went up, and you've got your matching background, which we didn't send out this week, which we should.
But I'm not sure that what you meant by the email question were the 5 questions that you asked. Is that right?
It's the email template. No, not the one I sent. Well, we'll figure that. I know that you were looking for a job, so this will be a helpful exercise. The attachment that we sent on, what was it, Wednesday, Kelly? The PDF document. That's what we're looking
right
at.
Now. Okay.
Okay.
I did not do that. So if you need someone who did that.
Nope. We're going to do it anyway, because what I want to talk you through is why is it constructed that way? And we're actually going to do this a little bit because I know a little bit about you. Because Jessica, by the way, is actually going through the value adventure, and we're going to help you really tighten up your language there. And I think this would be a good exercise for you. You all saw in the template, like the first chunk of it is about how do you talk about the future you, the fact that they're buying your future value, justifying it on your past, all of the good stuff, which I know I've just skipped over a ton of things. If this is new to you, go back and watch future shows. We've talked about this ad nauseum. I don't want to take up time. But you think about that email introduction, especially if you're looking for a job or making it ask. What most people are doing today is they're saying, hey, I'm looking for a job as a fill in the blank here. Here's a copy of my resume. Will you forward it to somebody? Would you please all stop doing that literally right now? Because here's why. One, you are forcing the recipient of this email to actually do some work. So they're going to have to open your resume or read it. And, or if they don't want to do that, they already have an opinion about who you are and why you're valuable and what your potential is. And you do not know what that is. And you want to make sure that they are not having to guess that for you, right? Third of all, nobody's looking at resumes. Literally, the most people looking at a resume is about 7 to 8 seconds. And you've now also made it really hard because they can't literally just hit forward and forward that email along to anybody else. So you've actually made the whole thing far too difficult. And I'll tell you, as somebody who is literally going at 100 miles an hour every single day, if I'm in the help mode, it does not happen in the moment. If it takes more than about 30 seconds. If I can do it in 30 seconds, it'll get done. If it takes any longer than that, it'll get weighted. Here's the other thing. It gets pushed down that email list and it might get forgotten. You never want to make sure that happens. So the first thing I look at is how do you make it easy for the person who's helping you to help you, which is why I have the introduction and then the template. And so what the introduction says, so, and Jessica, we're going to pretend that Kelly's going to help you for a second, just to keep my names easy, is Jessica, you're going to say, hey, Kelly, so great speaking to you the other day, or whatever it is your preamble is going to be. As you know, I am out looking for a new opportunity because my time at Mozilla came to an end. I've put some information for you together to make that help easy for you. And I've actually written an email template that you can copy and paste and personalize to make it easy for you to tell other people where I might be useful. There's your intro blow. Super clear about the ask up front. Then you say, okay, so here's my template thing. You then write this template, by the way, in third person, because remember, you're talking from the perspective of Kelly telling somebody else that you're awesome, is kind of the deal. So you say, hi, fill in the blank. I want to introduce you to my friend, Jessica. Jessica's looking for a new opportunity. And when I learned about her, I thought she might be the right fit for you. Second section, the kind of problems that Jessica is great at solving are bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. Remember, you are hired for your ability to solve problems in the future, justified by what you've done in the past. Your resume and LinkedIn tell your past story really easy. So Jessica, the kind of problems you are really great at solving are, let's riff a couple of them really quickly.
Requiring the input of many stakeholders from various backgrounds.
Okay, what else?
Collaborative.
Kind of boring, but okay. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
Things that haven't been done yet at that organization.
I was gonna say, yeah. And then, like, what is it you want to do? Like, what kind of role are you looking for?
I'm looking for a people manager role that's at a beginning executive level, not a very high executive level, in a larger company that allows me to, I mean, this isn't what I would say in an email.
That's okay.
But that would allow me to demonstrate standing something up that is a critical need to the company for the ability for the company to reach a mission that I find worthwhile for the company to reach.
Okay. There's a lot in there.
Sorry.
But like, in what, just only because I can't remember, and I know I looked this morning, but like, do you want to do it in a technology company again, or is there an industry you're excited about?
Biotech is my most excited, but it's tough. It's a tough move.
Yes.
But tech could be fine. Tech is fine. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic and things.
Okay. And if you were going to say, so people leader aside, if you were going to say, like, what sort of title-ish do you have in these organizations? It is the head of what?
The head of
is it product development? Is it project management?
It's research program management or research operations.
Research operations.
Yeah.
Okay. So kind of problems. So coming back to the kind of problems that Jessica's really great at solving are, you've just given me a bunch of features. Remember, they need to be problems that need to be solved. Understanding how to build from scratch a research operations organization. Understanding how to identify what are the key performance metrics for that sort of thing in there. And then, like, one of them, so you've got the first never been done before was a pretty consistent piece in your language earlier, like actually putting that in there. And I think standing up a research organization, like the opportunity for you specifically is somebody who hasn't done anything before, who wants somebody who knows how to do it. Easy buy. Just only because, does anybody work in a space where they're trying to set up a research and data analytics part of their organization who's hiring? I always like to ask. Nope. Well, not on this call. But we will keep asking. It's that simple, right?
And yeah, and exactly. So the challenge I'm having from a communications part right now is this is sort of an emergent role, and often what happens is the existing research director who's directing the research ends up having to stand up also the research operations, usually by choosing a junior person to have the grunt work, and it's like a, a job that really should be done well to multiply the effectiveness of the research overall.
It's the, yeah, I gotcha. It's the, what was the, like we've all been in the, I'm only looking at the gender of the room, like in all of our technology companies, they gave some really bright, energetic 25-year-old the ability to build the women at part of your organization and not really a diversity and inclusion expert. And now they're having to go back and hire and invest and do all of the right stuff the right way around, right?
Right.
So in your what kind of problems are you're really great at solving, you actually need to show the problem you're really great at solving is being a partner to the current, either being a partner to the current director of research and bringing the expertise to allow them to accelerate, or actually standing up an entire research organization that doesn't exist. Like that's how to phrase something like that. Now, you absolutely can say, really understand how to handle multiple stakeholders. And do you guys hear the difference in how it's positioned versus, that's what we're talking about, right? So kind of problems are really great at solving are bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. You will notice I only allow you 3. You are all of the things. Absolutely every part of you is fantastic. You already know, if you've been around my stuff, do not put the boring stuff, I already called Jessica out once, on there. Your ability to get shit done, your ability to connect people, your ability to be a strategic thinker, and not problems that need solving. Think about why they would be writing the job description. Put yourself in the head of the decision maker in the room that you're not in and go, what kind of problems are they trying to solve with this job description? That's where you'll be able to do that. Then you say, the kind of organization that would get the best from Jessica is. And this is where you can put your dream job on there, or however dream jobber you want to put in there. So as an example, and I'm just going to use myself for time's sake, like the kind of organization that would get the best from Joanna is one that is enthusiastic about promoting and supporting their women within the organization. One that has international expansion aspirations, and one that has gotten product market fit and is looking at an acceleration point in their future. So that just told you 3 things about me. 1, a bit about who I am as a person, because I'm a bit of a cuckoo person and super fun. So there's gonna be a lot of personality. I absolutely, by the way, have used that in the interview process. As I said, do you invest in and support in the women in your organization? And I thought the HR person was gonna fall out of the chair. And I went, methinks that we are not a good fit here, right? Because this is a non-negotiable for me. It's a choice that we get to do. 2, I talked about international expansion. So gives me another opportunity to think about how I think about organizations. And then 3, the third thing that I love to do then, when I was doing that, was to accelerate people at their hockey stick moment. It was what I used to be known for. That is again, while it's absolutely something I love to do, it's a problem that somebody needs to be solved. So again, 1, 2, 3, what kind of problems I'm really great at solving? Is Jessica really great at solving? Bang, bang, bang. What kind of organization would get the best from Jessica? Bang, bang, bang. So that when somebody reads that email, they go, I have those problems. That organization sounds like us. Because it's that conversation that will get somebody to say, now I want to reach out to Jessica. I'm not done with the template, because at the bottom, you do the how do you make it easy for them, where you say the person, and they don't even need to CC you on this. If you want to talk to Jessica, here's where you can learn more information about her. Link to the LinkedIn profile, embed it there. Here's how you can connect with Jessica. Here's an email address. And by the way, I'm really sorry for you older folks. If you are on Hotmail, Yahoo, anything that, like, get a Gmail account. You have to get modern with your emails. Hotmail's no longer good, or something else. Heck, buy your own URL and have your own name. I have 7. Like, think about what is your communication, because that sends out a brand message. So what is an email? What is a phone number? I'll let you reach out to Jessica and learn more about her if you're interested. Thanks so much. And then you leave room to customize. So that whole thing, literally, the person you sent it to can copy the whole thing, paste it in a new email, put in their little stuff, even put the subject line to be a copy and paste. Like, easy, 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 easy. And you send that out. Okay, so you remember how I said 50 people? This is why I said 50 people, because I'm going to come back to what is Sales 101. Sales 101, when you're thinking about how do you manage your pipeline and thinking about that funnel of your pipeline, means that you have to put more in the top of the funnel for the stuff to come out the bottom of the funnel. And my constant obsession about this has been something throughout my home career, and I will share a tiny story on this. When I was first selling in the mid-90s, selling websites in Austin, Texas, I knew what my sales goal was. And I knew that if I got to 10 decision makers a week, I would close enough deals over the course of the month, because I understood my sales cycle, so that I would be the #1 salesperson on the team every single month, month in, month out. And if I needed to dial it up a little bit, that was okay. But not only was I #1 salesperson, but I was consistent, which for a sales manager is basically what they want. I gave my sales manager consistency. I gave myself consistency in income. And I knew I needed to get to 10 decision makers, which meant that if I reached out to enough decision makers and got to my 10 decision maker goal by Thursday, even if I hadn't closed a deal, I still goofed off on Fridays, because I didn't want to work on Fridays, because I was like, I want to work a 4-day work week. And so I crunched my numbers to make it work for me on a Monday through Thursday. Now, did I do the odd thing on Fridays? Sure, because I was very customer focused, but it meant that I got to play on Fridays, which at the time in my life, because I was 20 something, was super fun. It was always about the math and understanding your math. So I tell you, as you were sending this out, you are going to want to send one email and just be like, oh my God, I did it. I've done it. I've done it. I've done it. And the first couple will be scary. You'll just get better over time. I want you every Monday morning to pick 5 people to send it to. And then you're going to log it in your sheet that you sent it to all 5 people. They may or may not respond to you, because some people won't, and that's okay. And then the following Monday, you're going to pick the next 5. And the following Monday, you're going to pick the next 5. And this 5 people a week cadence will mean that you have enough conversations going on that you can keep up with the conversations, but not so many that not so few that you're not actually keeping a cadence. And you keep picking 5. Now, when you get really comfortable with this, you can actually do the verbal version of it and have the conversation like I did with my neighbor, which is where you can actually just have the virtual conversation, but really think about how do you make that easy. And using that email template and using the idea of the funnel and tracking everything will mean that over time, the conversations will start to happen. And yes, you're going to send the first one, you're going to send a follow-up. So really think about what is your cadence there. Okay, I have one more thing I want to share with you before you go, but let me open up really quickly. Does everyone understand this whole construct and how it can work? How many of you are like, I'm totally doing this? All right. How many of you, because I want to thank you, are going to follow up with me and say, I sent out my 5? That's what I want. I want you to send out your 5. Which is why, and I said I actually have 2 more things to share with you, which is why for those of you that come back to me and say, and it could be anytime next week, I sent out my 5, we're going to increase the awesome, and we will be giving all of you 2 free tickets to give away to a future show. One of which you can either give them to somebody else or you can keep one for yourself. We don't care. It's up to you. You get to be generous to somebody else, but we'll give you 2 free tickets to give to other people, because we also want more people to understand about this, that you can use anytime over the next 6 months. So get back to us with I did the thing, because that's what I love, and we will be generous back. So that's the first thing. The last thing, which I just learned about last night and I cannot forget, and I just thought I would seed plant with you, all of you, is who knew that there was a thing called FOMO, which is the fear of messing up. See, now a couple of you guys, like, I had no idea. And I was like, let's share this with everybody, because how many of you suffer from FOMO? Yeah. And how many of you have seen people be fantastically successful who've messed up all over the place? Yeah. I have a working theory that there's actually a gender line on level of FOMO between men and women. I ended up actually having a whole conversation with my husband earlier today because I was like, do you have FOMO? And he only has, and I will remind you all, he's the most introverted human being on the planet, not as, he would never do this. I have more FOMO than he does. I have more FOMO than he does because I'm a girl person, and I think this is the issue. His only issue with FOMO is if somebody is watching. Otherwise, he could care less. And I'm like, this is it. So I challenge you all, now that you've heard of FOMO, and for those of you who don't know, like, self-diagnose for a second and sit here and I'm going and say to yourself, am I having a moment of FOMO? And if I am, remember all of those hands that went up and said it was actually the people who step over their FOMO and do the thing anyway that succeed in life. And what I want for all of you is whatever the future is that you want for yourselves. So please, I had a lot to say today, and I know we covered a lot. We are going to do this show again, probably in another couple of months, because I think there's a lot to share here. So do check in for new ones, and do come back. We've got, what are we talking about? We're actually talking about confidence next week. The following week is the standard Welcome to the Joanna show. So if you want to come back to that, we've got new content coming out for November and December soon. But otherwise, please feel free to reach out to us at hello@the-Amplify Lab. We always like to hear from people, especially when cool things are happening. And always look forward to seeing you at the shows. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to shout out to Kylie and team. But I know I've run over, so I'm going to let you all go for the day. I hope to see you all next week. Oh,
I'm interrupting you.
You are interrupting because I keep forgetting. We have a winner.
All right, here, let's
you
go.
are to the thing. Okay, for those of you who don't know what's going on, at every one of these shows, we do give out a free one-on-one to one of the participants. And Caroline Morris is our winner. And so Caroline, is she on the call still? Oh, Carrie, hi. You will be getting instructions, probably give us a day or so because we're changing how we're doing this a tiny bit. We'll be going to give you instructions with a link to schedule your appointment. I am very much finding out what your story is because I don't think we've chatted before.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Getting some one-on-one. No, it's, again, part of what I love with all of this. All right. Take care, guys. Have an awesome Friday. And yeah, ixnay on the FOMO. All right.
You.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ultimately, we're here to help you figure out how to teach other people who the future you is so that you can be you in the future. Because the clearer you are about who you are, what you want, and teach other people why that's awesome, the more likely you get to be you. I know, it's a bit of a circle. I'm Joanna, your potentialist and fairy godmother, and I wish you the very best. Thanks for coming.